Oh, look, Stinger, so good to see your face, mate. I have actually seen your face more than I've seen any of the other past players and the guys I used to play with because I've been working in Brighton and I see you out walking all the time and you're still looking as fit as you ever were, mate.
Well, I've seen you more than when you lived here, actually, Robbo.
Yes. That's that. Well, that's a lie. I hung around you like a bad smell. It was
Oh,
we lived with Paul Hopgood. We didn't see him. He was always hidden away in his room, wasn't he?
I'm sure what Hobby was doing.
We don't know. And I don't think we want to know what Paul Hopgood was doing in his room. Singer, mate, we're excited to be Melbourne supporters at the moment. Let's get this over and done with first. The players obviously going to take the field soon. You'll be tuning in, obviously, sitting down to watch the boys go about it. How's this year been for you watching from afar?
I've watched a lot more footy than what I normally have in the last 2 years. I was off it for a little while. I've grown to love Melbourne Footy Club and footy again. So you go through patches where, I don't know whether it's your own personal experiences or whether you're just not interested for a while, but I was a pessimist and now I'm an optimist. So optimistic about their future. So it's great.
Yeah.
I love it. And the way they're playing, and maybe everything's just gelled at once with development and age. That's just, I suppose, professional sport. All ages contribute to success, and now we're gelling well.
100%, mate. And you must look at some players, I reckon, and sort of, I mean, obviously you were a wingman. Who do you look at the moment and go, yeah, I can sort of see a bit of me in that? Who do you like watching play at the moment for Melbourne Football Club?
Um, Good question.
Good question without notice.
Well, I actually like. I love the way Lever reads the play, but that's an easy one. So people who can play in and out, whether it's a midfield position or half back, half forward. So got a bit of a soft spot. I think we should have been probably got little number 15 in the All-Australian squad or team as a wingman. I know it's been debated.
Yeah.
I'm of the old opinion that you get picked in your positions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet a wingman, maybe in my day, we were just starting to learn to become midfielders, but we played predominantly on a wing. So not having to get midfield numbers like 30 and 35, a good 15 or good 20 on a wing and kick 1 or 2 is probably should get you for consistency in the All-Australian team.
100%. Ed Langdon, I've watched him play this year and I've seen similarities, not 100% because there's no one carbon copy. You were a very intense player. You went hard at it. You would go where a lot of people feared to go. Ed Langdon is a fearless runner. He keeps going. And I just see similarities in the way he reads the play out in the wing and uses the space well. Do you sort of see that?
Yeah, a little bit. It's a hard position because you seem to get caught. If you've got a small ground, you watch the ball go over all day. You've got to get in the right position. And yet, if you're on playing at the G, you've got a bit of space. So it's a fine line. I'd hate to see the success rate at the end of a GPS, whether you get the possession or you don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the amount of gut running for a wingman probably relative to reward is probably a little bit less. But it's a fine line whether you drop in the hole at the right time or you counterattack at the right time. So I found it really hard as a junior. I hated playing on the wing because I'm a person that goes for the ball, and I played on Matera and Main Waring in my time, where two different complete players, but they taught me a lesson that you can't always go in and get the ball. So Main Waring was a great outside player, and yet he was tough, but he knew when to run off. And Matera was just fast and electric. So two different types.
That's really interesting, and I love hearing that. I remember being out at Waverley one day for a training session, and I think you might have been injured at the time, which was a pretty regular occurrence towards the end.
Yeah, it's probably 60-40% is that easily.
And let's talk about that in a minute. But I remember you teaching me about understanding the space and its starting positions and moving into that. I mean, football was a little bit more positional back then. Now it's different. It seems to be this moving mass. But one thing that I think stayed pretty consistent is wingers are holding their wings and holding their space and sort of, floating down into defense, but being that exit. So Lever and May are marking the ball so well at the moment, and they're looking up and they're seeing a really balanced winger, but maybe a Brayshaw and an Ed Langdon. Understanding space and when to run into it is a big part of football, isn't it?
Yeah, and I've got a bit of a theory on this, how people go on about courageous players. Courageous players are courageous, but sometimes stupid. and there's a lot of them out there. And a lot of people go, oh, geez, he's always courageous. But my twist on it is that he actually hasn't read the play that well, so he's out of position and he's got to do that.
Yeah, right. Interesting.
So they're not always like Lever is a great reader and he's already there. But people who have got to run back with the flight sometimes have been caught out. So they've got to do that. So they've been caught out of position. And yet they're tainted as being courageous. So I get it, but also there can be a stupidity factor in that as well. And I think Neil Danaher told us one day that if we've got a midfielder coming back with the flight of the ball, trying to take a mark, and you're playing centre forward, and then your centre back gets in front of you, tug the jumper and let us have one extra player rather than back in those days, it was pretty brutal. He would have got knocked out. So tug the jumper and stop him from knocking out our player because we're one down. And it sounds a little bit, call it a little bit not in the rules of the game because we're all taught to be courageous and run back with the flight of the ball. But at some stage, you're going to, if that was a grand final and you lose one or two players early on because of stupidity, or one of your players not playing in the position and he needs to actually give away a free kick, he should.
Yeah.
Sounds stupid, but it's another twist on it.
No, it's another twist. And I like that because you've always been that kind of guy. And I lived with you early days and it was probably something that I really needed because I wasn't up to scratch when it came to AFL football and the in-your-face having a hard look in the mirror style because I was never really taught that, but you were instrumental in teaching me that. But you taught everybody that and you were always like that yourself. If something's going to happen, and this is the Ron Barassi school as well, if it is to be, it is up to me. At the end of the day, you've got to look in the mirror and everything that happens is because of you. It starts with you and it ends with you. And if you can accept that, then you can move forward and better yourself. That was instrumental for me. Who taught you that? Is that something natural that came to you?
Well, I went through a few coaches. I started with Alan Jarrett in the under-19s, and then I went to John Northey. Then I had Neil Baum, Hutchie for a little bit of a spell there, and then it went into Neil Danaher. And then I had Rodney Eade at Sydney. So there's a number of people from an old school perspective and work ethic, but I suppose it comes back to your family inherited behaviours. Mum and dad, work ethic. Mum said if your footy's not going to work out, make sure you've got a trade or some type of employment to fall back on. And I suppose I always spoke to myself about every week of each game that I'm not guaranteed a game. I'm not guaranteed a game. So I reiterated that. And I suppose every time you went out on the track that you worked hard. And unfortunately, I was injured for a lot of that, but I would have worked 4 times as hard off the field. So I was able to go and play a running game, but not do any running pre-season. So that's an oxymoron in itself. Everyone would say you'd have to be a runner and be able to run, but because of injury, I couldn't.
Yeah. And I want to get to that in a minute, but let's go even a bit further back and start from the beginning with you. You get drafted, as I said, in 89 before you jumped on. You played your first game against Fitzroy in 89. You came to the club in 87 from Shepparton.
Yep.
Made the trip down the highway. What was the club like in 87? And then you start to find some success as the years sort of progress. The club starts to get better. You get to a night final, win that, and then some grand finals and final success.
Yeah, it was very much the John Northey era. It was us against them. We were always painted as the underdog. Never were going to win one. And then we ended up getting in the grand final. So it was us against them. I started in the under-19s where I didn't know anything about footy. I remember my first training session came from Shepparton and we had to run the lake at Albert Park and we'd had McDonald's before it. We'd just driven down from Shepparton and we hadn't had lunch and we had McDonald's. The next minute we're running in 35-degree heat around Albert Park Lake. But I think, again, looking back on the previous question is that I went to Melbourne High in 88 and I lived out at Mount Waverley. So I would get the tram home at night to Flinders Street and then get a train out to the house I was boarding at Mount Waverley and then run home with a school bag, a footy bag and an umbrella and probably get home at 10:30. The Roward family who Mike and Nance looked after me, they're all in bed and Kath, the daughter, and here I am putting the food in the microwave and did it all again and all again. So the work ethic to come through that period and the John Northey era of, we worked really, really hard and we got flogged on the track. Probably not relevant anymore, but that's probably where it all came from.
Yeah. I mean, I can relate because it was still semi-unprofessional when I got drafted in '97. Now the injury, mate. We talked about that a little bit. Your hip and your hamstring. That was another unfortunate situation. You might have had hamstring issues anyway, but the scar tissue that accumulated from a bit of a tragic, not a tragic thing, but just one of those unfortunate occurrences where you fell through a plate glove.
This is probably a good forum to clarify all this shit. So people think I just did heaps of hamstrings. So I found out my first ever senior pre-season I had Perthes, which is a flat hip cup, so deformity. So had numerous, not back pain, but numerous buttock pain sort of all the time. So referrals from probably having one hip shorter than the other.
Yep.
And then I'd been okay playing senior footy. I played every game, 24 games in 1990. And then unfortunately I had a freak accident where I fell through a glass window. So I severed the nerve in my right hand, which Graham Southwick ended up saving. And then I sliced my right thigh. But everyone thinks it's because I fell through the glass that I probably actually had all these injuries. I think a laceration and then sew it up, it was fine. I didn't tear a hammy and then have the corrugated hamstrings. But I had a lot of issues on that side. And I think that hip is also a little bit shallow. So it doesn't sit in properly. So I had all this lateral buttock pain. So that's how it all happened. I got stress fractures in my back, which probably came from an uneven pelvis, and then had operations probably for the sake of it, which is unfortunate. But it was all trying to get me right to play footy. It wasn't anything untoward. You look back on it and go, wish I didn't have them, but that's the way it happened. And I only basically tore 3 hamstrings in about 13 years. So I had a couple of minute ones, and then I actually did tear the right one off, which is had an avulsion, which is tear a bit of bone off, and then a full rupture, which is sounds all major, but really I was okay. Yeah. Considering I couldn't run, I think I did a pretty good job.
You did an amazing job. And that's the thing, what I mean by when I said the phantom, you were one of those people when you crossed the white line, it was all or nothing. Like it was 110% full steam ahead into packs, all that sort of stuff. And that's what made you a great player. And everybody loved that about you. And then unfortunately, these injuries don't allow you to necessarily perform like that and hold you back a little bit. I know how that feels because we've all had those injuries as well. So I suppose everybody loves Stephen Tingay. A lot of the girls especially love the blonde hair. I get this. I mean, I'm sorry to say it, but that's the feedback I get on my social media when I posted on getting Stephen Tingay on the show. They can't wait to see you, mate.
Oh, well, it's lovely that all these people have supported me for so many years and still do. People sometimes or occasionally recognise you in the street. I had a COVID test the other day, and some bloke goes, "Are you a cricketer or a footballer?" And and all of a sudden I had a conversation with a Blues supporter who was doing the administering the cars and all that sort of stuff. So security. So it was great. So if you take that side, you got to actually just receive it. I'm not good at the affirmation things, so now I just receive it and have a good conversation with people. Very lucky that I've been involved in a club that now I'm a life member. I didn't go and play for Fremantle, which I'm very proud of, and I'm a life member of the footy club.
You talk about development and mass. I want to talk to you about the photo quickly because and I'm allowed to talk about the photo because I was a part of it, and you know what I mean. One day, I have people watching this right now. One day I'm living with Stephen Tingay at the time and loving life. It was fantastic. You know, you're in part of my life, living with an AFL superstar in a beautiful home in Brighton. And I might have been just resting after a night out. I think it was a Sunday. It was a Morgan Dodge from the Herald Sun. Yeah, comes to our house. He wants to get a photo of Stinger for a story they're doing the next day. I toddle off upstairs and lie down on my bed and watching a bit of TV or reading a book. Maybe it was reading a book. Yeah, I would have been reading a book. I turn to my left and look out and I see Stinger up on the roof because my second story window. There's Stinger with no clothes on doing this pose and I can see everything, like everything, no clothes on. Everybody else was lucky they had everything else that was just skin. I could see the lot. What is going on here? Turns out to be this iconic photo that Dodgy took, mate. How did he get you to do that?
I don't actually know the questions, what he asked me to get me there to do it. And I just went, oh, yeah. But I'd had a spa delivered that was slid through the house, and it was it's probably about 120 centimetres off the ground, and I was able to stand on that and then get on the roof. Get up there, and the next minute, I don't know how I ended up nude, but yeah, I did it. Now it's an iconic photo that's folklore a little bit, and I joke around a bit, not about the photo, but if anyone says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm on the couch nude," or I'm just talking to mates on the phone. I'll go, "Yeah, I'm in the nude." They probably don't even know. Well, that's the hint I'm giving them. But I remember we played Essendon the next day at the G, and I just didn't listen to anyone. I had so much tunnel vision going. The other days when if you exploited yourself in the media, you're going to cop it for the day.
Copped it, yeah.
So I just shut down completely until the end of the game. And then David Hassett from the Coterie came up to me and goes, at the end of the game, we'd obviously won. So I was like, oh, God. So if anyone's going to say anything, just have a bit of tongue-in-cheek, have a laugh about it. He goes, "Whoa, what about that photo?" And I go, "What?" And it was right in the middle of it was like the truth, the third page of the truth in the middle of the sports section. So it turned out all right. I don't know what would have happened if we had lost and all that. I would have copped it for going nude in the sports section.
Mate, if the rest of us had a body like that, we'd be doing the same.
I was about to say, even though you joke around about it, but you go, okay, I've done the hard work. So I'm not deliberately exploiting it, but
share it with the world. There's a lot of girls of that era and that are watching now that thank you very, very much because they had hours of fun with that one. Let's talk about the hours of fun we're about to have when we watch the Demons in just a little while. Mate, how excited are you? What are you looking for from the Dees tonight? It's finals. You played finals before. What do they have to do?
I think just stay settled at the start. Last night when I watched the game and Port were real quick, and Geelong seemed to try and beat it with almost being frantic. I reckon they almost have to go the other way, just hold the footy up for a while.
Yeah.
If we try and match, as you know, the intensity is finals, or maybe the first game of the year is when people are the fittest and healthiest, but finals is probably like that when you've come off a pre-season. We're coming into finals, we're very healthy. I just hope we don't fall for too intense and too hard, and then when you start talking arousal levels and going over the top, the whole thing goes to shit, so to speak. So I just wanted to be a bit calm because I think last week's show, they've got the confidence, they've got the ability, they can do it. So now it's up to them. It's amazing. I got a bit emotional last week, to be honest.
And I'm glad to hear.
I don't know what's going to happen if they win.
I know. I was dancing around a lot of people were doing the same thing, but you just saw the emotion in Petrarca, and it is an emotional time for Melbourne supporters at the moment because there's been a long journey to get here, and I'm so pleased to hear that you're involved in it, mate, and loving every minute of it. You are a personal trainer now, post your career, working out of your own house. I know things get put on hold when we go into lockdowns, which is really solid and makes it really hard for you, but if you ever need the best personal trainer of all time, you just have to look up Stephen Tingay. I'm sure they can grab you on Facebook or something like that, mate, because he can transform bodies. Look at what he did to his.
I am a personal trainer. It is a little bit hard at the moment. So people with mental health or permits, I can train, which is very limited. I've lost 90%, but that's just the way it is. From the safety of it all, I've gone into my garage and we've invested some money. So that's where it's at. There's not much more you can say about it at the moment, but other than, try and help people and help them get through.
Stinger, you were instrumental in setting me up for an AFL career. And I really mean that's not a throwaway line just because I got you now. You taught me a lot about what it was like to live in Melbourne, firstly, what it was like to be an AFL player and to be a professional person as well, but just to be a good man. I am indebted to you, and thank you so much for joining me on my podcast today. I know all the fans out there have loved every minute of what you've said. Go well, mate, and have a beer tonight and enjoy the Dees, eh?
I'll have one of those.
And one of these ones here?
One of those, Demon beers.
Absolutely. Sure. We'll be toasting with a Demon brew. Good on you, mate.
No worries.
See you, pal.